Behind me is a fairly typical suburban garden. Nothing generally too exciting, no specific areas for wildlife, well maintained, but yet productive for some invertebrates here. This garden behind me over the last few years has recorded at least 2 new species of millipede new to Nottinghamshire, one recorded in Nottinghamshire definitely for the first time ever, and 2 others that are generally rare and uncommon species in Nottinghamshire, all from a suburban garden. It's surprising what can be under your feet sometimes. Now, unfortunately, most people aren't going to be able to go out into the gardens and turn a rockery stone over or a paving slab and find a new species for the county underneath it. But if you've got an older garden, especially in a suburban area like this here, you've got every chance of finding something interesting. Certainly always that potential really for a new species, but more than likely a 2nd, 3rd or even 4th record for the county. Gardens are great places for invertebrates, especially when the long-standing garden such as this has been well maintained for many decades, and this particular garden I've not broke into. This is the family home, and they've even let me back, which is quite surprising given my history. But there's lots of rockery stones here, and they're probably one of the best things that you can look under. It's something that you can get the kids involved in. Some quite interesting species to be found under rockery stones, like on the small rockery behind me. But anywhere where the stones or logs half buried in the soil, often great places for some interesting millipedes. Now, I mentioned in the introduction to this video that 2 species of millipede were recorded new to Nottinghamshire a number of years ago, right from this very garden. One from under some rockery stones at the side of where I am now, and another under a plank of wood which was at the back of the shed behind me. And as I mentioned, the species that have been recorded in this garden, at least the more interesting species and their sort of rarity status in Nottinghamshire, I'll put photos in, so for a while you won't see my face, so there's more reason for you to carry on watching this video. Anyway, the first of those species is one of the pallid millipedes, generally found sort of underground or certainly under stones, and if you've got rocky stones in your garden, that's the place to look to see if you can find this particular species. This is Melagona scutularis, and Gillis himself found it here in this Mapley garden in February 2017. Obviously, if you're looking for millipedes during the winter months, only bother really when it's quite mild or after it's been quite cold and has warmed up. That often brings them back up to near the surface again. But to this date, Melagona scutularis hasn't been seen anywhere else in Nottinghamshire. At least if it has, no one said anything. The other millipede new to Nottinghamshire is Leptoeulus belgicus, and that's one of your more typical sort of millipedes, the millipede shape that many people will recognise. But belgicus is quite distinctive in that it has a creamy stripe running dorsally down the centre of its body. But that dorsal stripe isn't always immediately obvious. In fact, it sometimes can be very hard to see, so you need to look at any possible specimen from different angles and under different lighting conditions in order to see the white or creamy line. It can be quite faint and very hard to see, but in others it's quite distinctive and fairly easy. But say it does depend on the conditions, and today it's heavily overcast and rain, but admittedly I've only seen it in this garden at least once that I can remember. It was found under a small plank of wood, say at the rear of the shed behind me. Now the next species that's been recorded in this garden wasn't actually the first sighting of this species in the county. In fact, there were several other records, but because of the difficulties in determining this species and the need to have a male to dissect, it wasn't until Dennis himself eventually found a male of this particular millipede that it was finally added to the Nottinghamshire list. And it's a wonderfully named Brachychituma bagnalli, or words to that effect at least. I may have murdered the pronunciation there, or I may have murdered the pronunciation, depending on your outlook in life. But Dennis himself, we found several specimens in this garden in 2017, and might have even been from 2016, but eventually in 2018 we found a male here. Again, it was another species found under rockery stones, and this time it was a male, and we were able to confirm the identity as being bagnalli. Now, apart from those three species, two other certainly rare on a county level species of millipede have been found here. Now, just read those names. They are Ophiodesmus albananus and Boreolus tenuis. Both were found in this area, the far reaches of the garden. In fact, Boreolus tenuis was found under a plank of wood which laid in the guttering of the greenhouse. Well, quite an unusual place for it to turn up, and it's the only sighting that Dillis himself ever had of Boreolus tenuis. Now, Ophiodesmus albananus was another species that, if I remember right, was found on this rockery here, and again underneath a rockery stone. Since found that at a couple of other sites, but it's certainly a species that's well worth looking for in your garden. Now, the key to looking for, or at least looking successfully for millipedes in your garden, are that your garden needs to be fairly mature. It needs to be gardened, or at least needs to have been gardened for some length of time. The more mature it is, the better chance you've got of finding something. And if you've got rockery stones down or bricks laid down, they're always worth searching for. Now, the whiter or pallid millipedes that I mentioned are very difficult to find sometimes, and they're certainly very difficult to see, and they're a lot smaller than what you might imagine. So if you do go lifting rockery stones, look carefully underneath. They're easily missed, but the fun thing is you never know what you're going to find there, and you could well find yourself a new species for Nottinghamshire or for the county that you live in, wherever it is.